Once you hear the following creepy, terrifying, or devastating details about droids, Dark Lords, and depressed rocks, there's a good chance you'll wish you never clicked on this video. But by then, it'll be too late, folks. I'm Gareth, this is What Culture Star Wars, and here are 10 traumatic Star Wars facts you wish you hadn't heard. Number 10, you can see Dooku's decapitated head if you look closely enough. Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, wasted no time when it came to scarring its audience, with Anakin Skywalker brutally decapitating Count Dooku within the opening 10 minutes. Christopher Lee's terrified face as his secret master demanded the Chosen One to do it, and the brief shot of the Sith Lord's head rolling along the floor both left viewers stunned early on. And if all that wasn't traumatizing enough, it turns out that George Lucas secretly left another unquestionably grim detail in this scene. Watch closely as Palpatine tries to get Anakin to leave a knocked out Obi-Wan Kenobi behind shortly after the Dooku death, and you can actually clearly see the remains of the former Jedi. It's not just Darth Tyrannus' head that's on show here either. His recently severed hands are also visible next to his lifeless body on the ground. Yep, there they are. Now, the final prequel is undeniably the darkest of Lucas' trilogy, and the only one of those films to earn a 12A or PG-13 rating. But this is a subtle and quite shocking visual that wouldn't have looked out of place in the background of a scene in an R-rated feature.
So the wonderful folks at Fan Home have only gone and done it again. Get ready to bring the ultimate Star Wars experience to life with everyone's favorite Sith Lord Darth Vader build-up model. The film-accurate replica of the most iconic villain in all of Star Wars, and perhaps even of all time, is crafted from high-quality die-cast metal and ABS plastic. So you're getting the good stuff here. This Sith will not crumble under pressure. Standing a massive over 1 meter tall when fully built, that is one big Vader, it's honestly a stunning display piece for any fan. Just look at him in all of his shiny glory. That is my chosen one right there. And honestly, take my word for it, he somehow looked even better in person. Like, I've seen these images, but when I saw him there, we went to Barcelona, we saw this big old Vader, it was something else. The helmet is also removable, revealing Vader's pretty face and head beneath. And the model makes authentic sounds from the film as well. Yep, that is right, you will get to hear the legendary breathing whenever you like. Plus, the red lightsaber illuminates and can be separated for added play or display, whatever you fancy. I mean, what more could you want? Oh, magazines telling you everything you need to know about the former Jedi turned Darksider. Well, Fan Home have got you covered there too. And you get a few gifts with your subscription, including a mug, shirt, and posters. It is the Vader gift that just keeps on giving, my friends. So, click the link in the description and use the code CULTUREDARTH to get yours today.
Number 9. What actually happens to an astromech in an N1 starfighter? Sticking with the prequels, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, climaxes with a thrilling collection of battles, with fights taking place on the fields of Naboo, within Theed Palace, and up in space above the planet. That last section sees a young Anakin Skywalker help the heroes take down the Trade Federation control ship, piloting an N1 starfighter with trusty astromech R2-D2. You probably never batted an eyelid at R2 popping up behind the young Chosen One here, what with his placement in the fighter not being too different to how he was positioned in Luke Skywalker's X-Wing in the original trilogy. However, the fascinating Incredible Cross-Sections book that looks at some of the ships seen in that first prequel in a bit more detail revealed a pretty disturbing fact about R2's body here. You see, to fit into the nimble fighter, the droid's head had to telescope upwards from its body after entering the ship from below. In other words, R2 pretty much looked like he'd received the Count Dooku treatment whenever he plonked himself within one of these aircrafts. Regardless of whether this Legends detail is still canon or not, it's still hard to unsee poor R2's dome being separated from his body in this detailed schematic. Number 8, the traumatic reason the Mos Eisley bartender didn't like droids. It was quite easy to despise the bartender seen kicking R2-D2 and C-3PO out of the Mos Eisley cantina back in the first ever Star Wars movie. Though much of the galaxy were understandably not the biggest fans of droids in the wake of the Separatists using them to fight the Republic in the Clone Wars, the bar's no droid policy still felt a bit unfair. After all, they weren't all murderous and untrustworthy machines. Some just wanted to help. However, once you find out the traumatic incident poor Wooher, the aforementioned bartender, went through when he was younger, it becomes a bit tougher to just label him as an ignorant bully. During the Clone Wars, this humanoid's parents were actually killed by battle droids. A horrifying event revealed in the certain point of view we don't serve their kind here story that clearly stuck with him for the rest of his life. But he did have a soft spot for the Jedi after they saved him from a battalion of machines back in the day, with this being the reason why he didn't report Obi-Wan Kenobi to the Empire after he clashed with Ponda Baba and Dr. Evazan in the bar. More on the latter later. Number 7, Anakin Skywalker was a slave pretty much his whole life. Along with being the place where Wooher told R2 and 3PO to keep out of his watering hole, Tatooine was also the planet Anakin Skywalker called home during his early years. It wasn't exactly the greatest upbringing, of course, with little Annie being a slave on the desert world up until the age of 9. Thankfully, that all changed for the youngster when Qui-Gon Jinn and co. flew into town. Anakin eventually won his freedom in a pod race after the Jedi had made a bet with his owner, Watto. Or did he? As tough as this may be to hear, Anakin was always a slave to someone or something in his life, in a way. Even when he left Tatooine to join the Jedi Order, that freedom consisted of him being made to follow the strict rules of the Jedi, and being told off when he opted to do things his way. Then when he turned to the dark side and joined forces with Emperor Palpatine, that alliance saw Darth Vader again being constantly ordered around by the Sith Lord. The most heartbreaking part of all of this, Anakin only really experienced a short period of genuine freedom in his entire life, with that coming in those few moments between defeating his master and dying in his son's arms. Skywalker's arc is already one of the most tragic in all of Star Wars, but this often overlooked detail makes it even more devastating. You know what, that was a really sad Anakin entry, so I want to know right now, what is your favorite Anakin moment in all of Star Wars? Let me know in the comments section down below. Number 6, Luke Skywalker's Tonton was pregnant before she died. Introduced early on in Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back, a lovable Tauntaun is seen galloping across the Hoth snow, with Luke Skywalker's steed going by the name of Reba. Oh, how lovely. Sadly, of course, it wouldn't be long before this tusked creature would be slaughtered by a terrifying Wampa, and she'd then be consumed by the vicious snow beast within its cave. It is a deeply unsettling sequence, but it gets even more disturbing once you learn about a rather dark fact that you'll instantly wish you could unhear. Reba, the innocent Tauntaun that was taken too soon, was actually pregnant here. This distressing detail was revealed in the From a Certain Point of View The Empire Strikes Back book in the She Will Keep Them Warm story. Oh, and Han Solo's Tauntaun that eventually died in the snow? Well, that was Reba's mother. Put simply, folks, multiple generations of Tauntaun all bit the dust in the opening act of Episode 5. Nice. I mean, you're probably regretting clicking on this video at this point, but you're still here, so I'm going to ask you to hit the subscribe button, because I promise you that not all the videos we do on this channel are this traumatizing. But onwards we go. Number 5, the most disturbing Star Wars creature you've never heard of. Anyone who has ever watched Star Wars The Clone Wars will be well aware of the fact that the galaxy is home to some quite disturbing parasites, with brain worms causing quite the headache for Ahsoka Tano in Season 2's Brain Invaders episode. But if you thought those mind-controlling worms were creepy, then wait until you hear about these little guys. Within the expanded universe, there's actually a thing known as Drock. Appearing in the Planet of Twilight novel, said little parasites buried into the skin of their host, and then proceeded to drink their life energy from within. They also possess the ability to assimilate with the host's body, meaning they'd mimic their body chemistry. This made it tough to pick them up on scanners. They also got bigger and more intelligent as they continued draining their hosts, and reproduced rapidly in the shadows. More often than not, the host would die from the death seed plague caused by the Drock within. There'd be no clear sign of anything being wrong for some time, with the first real symptom being the rapid decay of the host's skin. Within half an hour of initial symptoms showing up though, that person could be dead. Yikes. And they could possibly be related to the cerulean Drock seen within Dryden Voss' office in Solo: A Star Wars Story. Number 4, the decraniated are a messed up thing. Speaking of Solo, a Star Wars story, that spin-off tale contained arguably one of the worst and most horrendous creations in the history of the galaxy, the decraniated, with the half-headed beings having quite the horrific backstory. Created by the same Dr. Cornelius Evazan who would eventually bump into Luke Skywalker in the Mos Eisley Cantina, these servants were originally designed as a money-making plan. The awful Evazan would strip his victims of their identities when transforming them with cybernetic tech into these droid-like beings. And if that wasn't bad enough, they'd then be sold into servitude against their will. When on Jeddah, Evazan would even take those wounded in the local insurgency attacks and transform them into more of his nearly headless slaves. The galaxy is instantly a darker place once you realize what you're actually looking at here. Number 3, clones have seriously short lifespans. Clones had a rough old life, didn't they? These loyal troops were bred to fight and die for the Galactic Republic, with thousands of these good soldiers following orders being killed in the Clone Wars. The fact they were made to rapidly age so they could be battle-ready as soon as possible, a process that was actually rather painful, was already a quite disturbing one the more you think about it. But then, consider those clones who actually survived the many battles alongside the Jedi against those clankers. Thanks to their rapid aging, these ace fighters were soon nudged out of the Imperial Army, and many fans forget that they found themselves hitting old age way quicker than the average humanoid. Twice as fast, in fact. Could you imagine living out your whole life in half the time? Oh, and most of that time was spent being trained for conflict and fighting on the battlefield? Not much of a life, is it? Most clones would be lucky to make it to 40 years of age, with Captain Rex only being about 31 at the time of the Rebels animated series, but looking like an ass-kicking pensioner. So let me get this straight, the reward for those who made it through a traumatizing and galaxy-changing war was quickly moving into their later years, despite technically only being half that age. That's just cruel. Number 2, there was a constantly depressed mountain on Endor that tried to kill children. The forest moon of Endor is best known for being the home of the Ewoks, and the location of one of the most important battles in Star Wars history. But did you know that it's also a place that boasted a sentient mountain? That's right, in the expanded universe, the Marvel Ewoks comics to be more precise, there was a massive mountain by the name of Mount Sorrow on this moon. Not only that, this mountain was also constantly depressed. At one point, Warwick W. Wicket and Princess Kanisa Ajari Kintaka took their pal Teebo to the top of the big rock after he'd contracted the perilous laughing spell, which caused him to prank others and experience bouts of laughter that he could not control. After initially thinking there was a being at the top of the mountain whose tears could cure the laughing issue, it's revealed that this was actually the mountain itself. But, and here's the disturbing part you'll wish you'd never learned, after pissing off the mighty face in the rock, it actually attempted to kill both Wicket and Kintaka with a huge gust of wind. Thankfully, Teebo saved them, and after insisting that he'd rather live with the problem than risk their lives trying to get the tears again, Sorrow eventually decided he was worthy of the all-important eye liquid. There was a happy ending in there at least, but that does not change the fact that the Legends section of Star Wars contained a mountain that was not above killing teddy bear kids. Wonderful. And finally, and I am so sorry, number 1, according to Ian McDiarmid, Palpatine does indeed have sex. Now, if you want to nitpick, this one doesn't really count as a fully canonized fact. However, with it coming straight from the mouth of the bloke who played the most barbaric and terrifying bloke in the galaxy, it's about as close to canon as you can get without being added to Wikipedia. When talking to Empire about the legendary Big Bad, Emperor Palpatine actor Ian McDiarmid would tell them, please don't pursue that line too vigorously, but yes, he does, meaning having sex. It's a horrible idea to think of Palpatine having sex in any shape or form. Now, it is worth noting that despite the actor feeling that Sidious did indeed do it, he was quick to add, but then of course, perhaps he didn't. Before then going on to say that maybe midichlorians had something to do with the creation of Rey's father, who was a strandcast of Palpatine in canon. Whether you choose to believe McDiarmid's opinion that Palpatine did the deed or not, either way, the wrinkly old force of evil going at it is a visual that not a single soul on this planet wants in their minds. So, apologies for putting it there.